All right.
Good evening.
All right.
Brother Lusire and myself, JT Hale, Lusire Boyd, the host of the Healthy Brotherhood Experience. Welcome. And this evening we are talking with the Knoxville chapter's captain, Brother Phillip Tucker. Brother Phillip Tucker, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
So I'm the captain of the Knoxville chapter of Black Men Run. Our chapter is fairly new. You know, we're just over a year old. So we still got a lot of learning and growing to do, but we're trying to do our thing out here in East Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a therapist by trade, licensed therapist here in Tennessee. I specialize in trauma, both developmental trauma, things like abandonment issues and perfectionism and all that kind of stuff, and also, PTSD. I'm born and raised in Knoxville for the most part. And I've got, I don't know, what you want? I'm a Pisces. I like long walks on the beach.
Did he say his sign? Hey, did he say his sign?
Pisces. Float on.
What's your birthday in March?
March the 7th, yeah.
Okay.
My brother's birthday, March the 9th.
Okay.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, Brother Phillip, so the focus for this episode, as well as the next episode, we're doing two parts here, Black men and mental health. Is what we wanted to touch on. I know you have done so far 2 mental health first aid responder certifications, which
yes,
I participated in. Well, I participated in 2 of them. You may have done more than that. That you encourage the captains to sign up for. Can you tell us a little bit about that actual course?
Yeah, absolutely. So mental health first aid is a program that really it equips people with some basic skills to be able to recognize the signs and symptoms of a mental health crisis and to be able to respond to those symptoms and get a person connected to resources, if that's necessary, or just to be able to, meet those needs at a more, I guess, how could you say, more informal level. So for us as a running group, well, actually, we are not a running group. We are a social network of impact and influence who does several group run activities. And so when we're doing those group run activities, all kinds of stuff tends to come up in conversations and things people might be struggling with. So we've, made those resources available to our captains so that they can respond to those things as needed and support the brothers, when they're out there doing their thing.
Lusire, did you take one of those courses?
No, I didn't have that opportunity to take one of those courses. I was just hearing about it in the background, and I heard about Phil was the man doing that. And I was like, oh, snap, that's kind of cool. And what happened this past, what was that, yesterday, man, with Twitch and everything, man, I said, wow, it was ironic that we're having this particular episode going on. And to me, it's like, when I even seen Robin Williams back in the day, I was like, all these guys to me look happy on the outside, but it's something going on in the inside that we don't know about, us that's just watching them on TV or whatever is going on. It's like, wow, I thought everything was hunky-dory,
Yeah. And you hear that a lot. I mean, some people do such a great job of masking the depression. You would just never know. Some of the people who are the most jovial and outgoing are some of the people who are struggling the most. And what's even more, I think, unfortunate and challenging is, oftentimes people don't know that they're depressed. When you're in the grips of depression, depression does a really great job, unfortunately, I think, of blending in. And so you can be having thoughts that are really being influenced, and animated by depression that you might think are your actual thoughts, when really it's the depression.
Right.
But when you're in it, it's really hard to tell, and depression has a way of isolating you. So those people who might be able to pick up that something may be going on, you may have distanced yourself from those people, so they might not even have an opportunity to notice.
Right.
So a lot of challenges can come with that.
Hey, I've been there before, man. I've been in my first marriage, I had caught my first wife cheating on me. I don't talk about it a lot, but I got depressed and I was about to commit suicide, man.
Mm-hmm.
And that mental thing ran in my head, man. I'm sure it's ran in other people's head that they won't talk about it.
Yeah.
But I kind of was like, when I recognized it, I said, oh my goodness, what in the world? Something that you say you would never do. And you say, I don't know how people do it. But when it hit you, it's like, whoa, where'd that come from?
Absolutely.
And you like, if you can get past it and look on the other side, I look back in hindsight and I say to myself, man, my life has changed drastically, man. I have the best. I'm living my best life right now, man.
That's right. That's right.
But when you're, like you say, when you're in it, it seems like it's doom and gloom, man.
That's right. That's right. And just men in general, the suicide rates post-divorce for men are out of control, because a lot of men, a big part of our identity is tied up in, being husbands and providers and, fathers, and all these roles that we take on, which are important and a big part of who we are. And when those roles are challenged, it can really be difficult for men to work their way through that. So that's actually very common.
Man, you got to have a good support group around you, at least from what I've learned. You need to have brothers that's in, like that book I'm reading with David Goggins. You got to have people that's in your foxhole, man, that's going to watch you and say, hey, something's wrong with this brother. I need to talk to him and see what's going on. Sometimes you can feel something wrong with somebody.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of things about this brotherhood that inspire me and that I get really passionate about, just because I think that we are we just defy a lot of those stereotypes and the tropes that you hear. You know what I mean? Like they say that we don't, men don't talk about, their emotions, and we don't talk about stuff of substance. But yet just last year, we had brothers showing up on Saturday morning, getting certified in mental health first aid, having these conversations. So we do this, right?
Yep.
And the conversation that we were having during those courses was so rich. And, one of the beautiful things is we're already doing this stuff. And, the tools that we're trying to roll out to the brotherhood, like mental health first aid and other things, are just to supplement what we already do. We naturally show up for each other. And so anyway, I know, what happened with Twitch is it's so unfortunate and such a tragic situation. And I'm glad that we're having these kinds of conversations and that we're doing things to be proactive. So, because we had this call scheduled, already, you know what I mean? And so the fact that we're being proactive and having these conversations and get resources to people just says a lot about the brotherhood and what we're focused on.
Yeah, very important. It's something we need to bring awareness to. And we have to get past this social stigma, cultural stigma of not wanting to seek out help. Or another thing that you touched on, Phillip, sometimes a person may not even realize that they are in a mental health crisis. So question for Lusire, how did you come out of that situation that you were in? How did you come out of that fog of depression for you?
That's a very good question you asked. for me, it was my relationship with God. And I'm a Christian brother myself, but you don't know how your relationship, how close you are to God until something break down. You could say you this, that, and the other, but you need something rough to happen in your life to really see. Let's see how your faith really is.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, when you in the trenches and when something really happens in your life. And what happened in my particular case, I heard something say, shoot everybody and shoot yourself. That's what I heard.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, you know, it went right through my head.
Wow.
And I was, and it was the craziest thing. And I was like, man, that the devil is a liar. That's how I was when it happened to me. And I had, this was way back in 06, man. This was years ago. I had just got licensed to carry. I've been born and raised in Detroit, never had a gun except in the military. All of a sudden, I ended up getting licensed to carry because they made it legal in Detroit. So I said, okay, let me go ahead and get mine. Got licensed. I kid you not, within that was in March. Within May, that incident broke down. I had ran into the incident, and I looked on my side, I was like, dude, I got a gun on me, you know? And for that to run through my head at that time, I said, this ain't nothing but the devil, man. All my whole life, I ain't never had a gun, and all of a sudden I got a gun. But what I did to get out of it, in my situation, is I put it over to God. I raised my hands in the air and I said, Lord, let not my will be done, but let yours be done. And I gave it over to him, and I cried it out. It's like I cried, and I just raised my hand and I gave God the glory. And that's how I was able to overcome it. And then the next day, I did that like for a whole night. I did that for a whole night. I went over one of my friend's house. He let me stay the whole night, and he put me in one of his rooms, and I literally praised the Lord the entire night in his room. You know, everybody has their way of dealing with it, but mine was to give it over to God.
And there's a lot of key things I think that you had in place that helped buffer you in that situation, so you didn't succumb to it. You had a lot of what we would call protective factors in place, you know, in the clinical world. So it sounds like you had a solid understanding of who you were, and so that when these thoughts came through, you know, you had something to compare it to that was so, you know, so contrary to who you knew yourself to be, that it stood out to you. So that's, you know.
Yes. And another thing was I had strong men in my life.
So
You know,
social support.
that was key. Is I had a counsel. It's a verse that says it's safety in the counsel of the godly.
That's right.
So it's like with Black Men Run, I got so many strong men around me from all walks of life. I know the strong ones that I can conceal in and tell them certain things that they can give me information back, you know, being leaders and stuff. That's a blessing to have. Keep strong men around you. Some people are introverts and they keep to themselves, which isn't good, because you gotta have a man. Sharp iron sharpens iron.
Right.
Right.
You know, and that's what's the awesomeness about Black Men Run, is that we're all sharpening each other. You know, I'm watching you. I see your good. You see my good. If I see your bad, I don't care about that. I was taught to eat the meat and throw away the bone.
Right.
Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know,
right. That's right. And so your spiritual wellness was also strong, and your social support system was also strong. So you had a lot of things. You know, when I look at the person's wellness, there's some specific domains that I look for and I listen for as a clinician. And so those domains off the top of my head are your spiritual wellness, right? Your mental and your physical, which are actually pretty much one and the same, contrary to popular belief. You have your finances, you got your vocational work stuff, you've got your social support system, social wellness, you've got intellectual wellness, which is about, constantly learning and being curious and that kind of thing. And you've got your environmental wellness, which is like your physical environment, your home, your community, that kind of thing. So the cool thing about Black Men Run is if you're engaged in a chapter and you've got strong relationships, you're checking several of those boxes just by nature of being a part of this organization and being consistent. And you don't have to think about it. You're not even really giving it much thought. If you just go through the motions, you get the benefit of having those things in place. And then the other thing I'll say about that is your spiritual wellness in my clinical experience is the most important one of those domains. And when I say spiritual, I work with people of all different walks of life. So not everybody's a Christian, so your spirituality can have something to do with religion, but it may not. In a clinical sense, your spiritual wellness is essentially about having a connection with something that's bigger than you, that's positive, right?
Amen. Yes.
And it may be God, it may be something else, but what's very important about that is having something that is bigger than you in that way and bigger than those other domains protects you, because all those other domains can blow up. Your family can be taken from you. Your physical health can be taken from you. Your finances, your job, your house, like all that. You can lose all that stuff pretty easily, honestly. It's kind of scary how easy some of those things can blow up. Right. And when that happens, you need something that's going to keep you anchored so that you have something that's life-giving while you're going through that challenging situation. And that's where your spiritual wellness comes in.
Absolutely.
So super important.
One of the things I learned in Phillip's mental health first aid responder courses, one was recognizing someone that may be in mental health turmoil, crisis. And once you recognize them going through something, you don't know what, how to approach that person and engage them. Because some people will shut you down, and some people may feel like you're being intrusive, or and they may really need the help.
Right.
Your abilities are somewhat limited based on who you're dealing with. So you may only be able to do so much. And as Phillip emphasized during the certification, we're not counselors, we're not licensed therapists. We haven't spent years in school learning this thing. What we are is attempting to be as a link to a source of aid for this person. But like in Lusire's situation, for someone in it that may not recognize that they are in it, I think maybe that's where we see the extreme measures of them taking their lives, or worse, taking other lives, as we've seen the murder-suicides rate have also gone up. And so I don't know what you say to a person. I mean, we can't approach people if we don't know that they're going through something.
Yeah, that's right.
And if a person doesn't even realize that they are dealing with something, or something's dealing with them, it's really got control of them.
Yeah.
That is just that's a big question mark for me. I was looking at this brother's Instagram page, DJ T Witch, looking at his pictures of his family, his videos of him dancing, and he seemed like such a happy-go-lucky guy.
Yeah.
It just baffles me what could be going on internally for this brother to take his own life, to take him away from his family, away from his kids, away from his wife, not to mention your other family and friends. Such an extreme, permanent solution to whatever really is temporary.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And there can be such a cloud with depression that it can be shocking how different somebody's internal experience can be from what you see on the outside. And Lusire, you said the devil is a lie, you know what I mean? And the depression is a lie also. And a very convincing one. So any insecurities you have, anything that makes you vulnerable, depression preys on that kind of stuff. And the lies can oftentimes seem true, when you're in the midst of it. I actually have a self-assessment that's a very quick depression test, and it might be helpful for us to just kind of read through it.
Yeah, let's do
Oh,
it.
absolutely.
Just to give people an idea of some things to be aware of. So this is coming from a website that I really like. It's called helpguide.org, that has several articles and resources for mental health. And their stuff is always research based and that sort of thing. So it's a good resource. But this says, over the past 2 weeks, how often have you been bothered by any of the following problems? And the way it scores it is on a scale of 0 to 3. 0 is not at all. 1 is several days. 2 is more than half the days, and 3 is nearly every day. So very simple. And then at the end, you just, tally up your points. So the first one says little interest or pleasure in doing things. Number 2, feeling down, depressed, or hopeless. Number 3, trouble falling or staying asleep or sleeping too much. Number 4, feeling tired or having little energy. Number 5, poor appetite or overeating. Number 6, feeling bad about yourself or that you are a failure or have let yourself or your family down. Number 7, trouble concentrating on things such as reading or watching television. Number 8, moving or speaking so slowly that other people could have noticed. And number 9, thoughts that you would be better off dead or hurting yourself in some way. And the way those scores fall, if you've got 1 to 4 points, that would be minimal depression. 5 to 9 points is mild depression. 10 to 14 points is moderate depression. 15 to 19 is moderately severe depression, and 20 to 27 is severe or major depression. And this questionnaire is not intended to replace professional diagnosis. So, it's not to diagnose you, it's just to give you sort of a guide as to, where you may be in terms of your symptoms. But only a mental health professional sitting down, talking to you and actually assessing you can actually diagnose a mental illness. But it's a good guide to have kind of, in your back pocket. Because when you see those things start to creep in, it's a lot easier to intervene when things are, minimal than it is when they get severe. When they get severe, now we're fighting an uphill battle at that point.
Do you know offhand, Phillip, the roundabout percentage of people of color that are working in the mental health industry?
Man, I'm glad you asked that. It's pretty low. I don't know for sure, but the number that's coming to mind is about 4 to 5%.
Wow, that's very low.
That's real low.
When you think about, our percentage, in the population, and then you start whittling that down, by profession, the numbers aren't great. And this is something that I'm noticing. The more we're having these conversations about mental health post-COVID, especially in the Black community, the more and more these conversations sound political, honestly. And the reason is because systemically, we haven't had the things in place that really promote mental health. And there's several aspects of, our history here, as Black people in America, that really work directly against what mental health is. So as we start to have honest conversations about this, it sort of naturally starts to lean toward more systemic types of conversations about resources and that sort of thing. And so this is going to be, we got some tough conversations to have as a society. I want to read you guys the definition of what mental health actually is, defined by the World Health Organization, so that you get an idea of what I'm talking about. So according to the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes their own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to their community. So, those four major components: realizes their own abilities, just think about our legacy in this country, can cope with the normal stresses of life, right? What's normal to a Black man in America when we're the most overrepresented in terms of interactions with the police and incarceration and, all these systemic things? Our normal is very different than some other demographics normal.
Exactly.
Can work productively and fruitfully. I mean, just think about the amount of time that we were literally in bondage. And then we had, Jim Crow and all these things. And then we're locked out of the job markets in different ways. And, that stuff sticks with you. It doesn't just go away. The things that happen to one generation affect the next generation, even on a genetic level. There's some studies on epigenetics that will blow your mind. And is able to make a contribution to their community. And just think about the things going on. Just think about the challenges, that we're trying to address, within the community. So we have a lot of challenges to really live out that definition of what mental health is. And there's nothing in that definition about depression, PTSD, any of that stuff, because the absence of illness is not what mental health is.
Right.
Mental illness is just a barrier to those things that, define mental health.
What I think about is the generations of our people coming out of, not just coming out of, but going into slavery, and the decades and generations dealing with that, coming out of that, then dealing with the Jim Crow, and then the civil rights struggle.
Absolutely.
There were no therapy classes for that I know.
No.
So a lot of that has been really kind of passed down to our generation and so forth. And, some people have been able to break vicious cycles and what we call generational curses. Other people have not.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, some people bring that on to their generation with their kids, and it doesn't end. I think this time and era is very important, as we're a lot more vocal with social media. We have a lot more information, people sharing experiences. And so with all of that, I would think we are getting better.
We are. And I think that we're having to I think we're trying to move this system forward despite the challenges that we face systemically, honestly. And just to give you sort of an idea of how far behind the society is in terms of really giving us the support that we need to address mental health. Here I am, I've got, years, I think I'm looking at about 17 years now of experience in the behavioral mental health field. Been through undergraduate, master's, licensure, been a practicing clinician, licensed practicing clinician. And it was this year that I realized that there was actually an association for Black psychologists. It was this year that I knew that there's a national association for Black counselors. Nowhere in any of my programs or studies was that information volunteered. I had to go find it on my own. And I just have, and here's the crazy thing, some of the contributions of those Black psychologists I knew about, but people who were not people of color had been credited with their work in different ways. And so the system as a whole is not doing their due diligence and making sure that we understand what our contributions have been and that we're getting support and making sure that our individual needs and our, particular experience is being taken into account in terms of mental health as like at the institutional level. So that just kind of gives you an idea of like how much work there is to do in terms of centering us in that conversation of mental health, the way that we need to be centered to make sure our needs are being met in the way that we deserve to have our needs met.
Wow. Not surprising.
No, and if again, I don't want to get political on here, but I have a duty to be honest with you all about this information.
Please do, because there is a political aspect to health in the United States.
And so when you look at the fact that, Congress issued an apology to Blake, did you all know that Congress issued an apology back in 2009 for slavery, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, all these different things?
Yeah, it didn't really mean a whole lot to me.
So if you look at that apology, you can see, like all the things that, we've had to endure. And then at the bottom of that apology, there was essentially a, what do you call it? A clause at the bottom that basically said, now this doesn't mean that we're responsible for doling out any resources for this.
Exactly.
Like, is it? See, we're not liable to give you any money as a result of this. And
an apology without any action.
And so my point in bringing that up is, if we're going to really honestly deal with our mental health needs, we really need resources to do so. And if there are things that are on the historical record that we know can affect us for generations, that's a problem. That has to be dealt with, because we can't just, it's in a situation where we need to be talking about pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. We need some boots, in terms of like
straps
and some straps. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. And most definitely.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell y'all about a study that'll blow your mind if I'm not, talking too much. Y'all tell me to shut up if I'm.
Hey man, that's what we have you on here for, brother. You're a wealth of knowledge in this mental health field. You were the first person that came to my mind.
So this study blew my mind. So epigenetics, I don't know how much y'all know about epigenetics, but it's looking at, the things we pass down on a genetic level. All right. Okay. So not just the experiences that we have, directly, but also the things that, our ancestors and whatnot have experienced. So what they did was they took some mice and they conditioned these mice to have an aversion to the smell of peppermint. So they would I think they shocked these mice. So they would waft in the smell of peppermint and shock the mice, right? And so what these mice realized was, okay, like this peppermint smell and this shock are related, so let me avoid the peppermint, right? Makes sense. And so after they conditioned these mice to do this, these mice had babies. The babies of these mice also had an aversion to peppermint, but they had never experienced any kind of adverse experiences related to peppermint.
Wow.
Take it a step further, those mice had babies. Those babies also had an aversion to peppermint, and they had never had any negative, experiences with peppermint. So at a genetic level, this aversion is being passed down because we're wired to survive, and we want to pass on our DNA to the next generation, and we want to make sure, that DNA, survives. So,
right.
So you think about everything that we've been through, it's pretty miraculous that we, that we've achieved, and that we're as put together as we are. Honestly, we defy statistics in a lot of ways. We're walking anomalies and don't know it.
Wow. You know what? That reminds me of, like with African Americans, most of us don't swim. And a lot of the great grandparents used to say, stay away from the water, stay away from the water. And I remember my mother had this thing that all her children were going to learn how to swim. And we all had to go, either Salvation Army or Red Cross, what have you. We all learned how to swim. All 6 of us know how to swim. And it was a blessing because 2 times in my life, 2 African Americans in the pool were drowning, and I was able to save them.
Look at that.
But that with what you said with the mice situation, I can see how that, in just that little way of swimming, has stunted us and keeps us a lot from doing other things like doing an Ironman. Most African Americans won't do the Ironman. Main reason is because they have the fear of water or can't swim. You know, we can go to a whole nother level once we overcome some of these.
Right.
What you say, genetics? Yeah, we got to overcome that somehow through new generations.
That's right. And that's the beautiful thing, you know, the same way that those things can be turned off, can be turned on, they can also be turned off. You know, so we can't, you know, it's not a doom and gloom situation. Because there's a lot that we can, and we're doing it. You know, we're doing it. Like, I look at, again, this organization, and we just naturally do so many things that promote, you know, our mental health. You know, I look at this first bullet point, in the definition of mental health, realizes their own abilities. How many of us were taught to play it small on some level because generations ago, to not play it small meant death?
Right.
Don't be walking out here thinking, you know, you somebody getting too big for your britches, because that's, you know, now you're making yourself a target, you know. So like, how much of that has been passed down by people who were trying to protect us, but at the same time dimming, you know, really encouraging us to dim our light in different ways, you know.
Because of those circumstances that they were in.
That's right.
Even the fear of water that Lusire mentioned, think about where that comes from.
Yeah.
Stay away from the water. Don't, you know, because the water meant, in a lot of people's minds back in the day, probably meant death coming across the ocean on those ships.
Absolutely. And even here, you know, when they talk about, you know, we know about Emmett Till and, you know, what happened with that situation, but what we don't really talk about a whole lot is when they were looking for Emmett Till, they found a lot of other bodies, you know, that were, you know, submerged in bodies of water looking for him.
Wow.
You know, so it's you know, it's deep. And so, you know, I think about when we did the Selma to Montgomery relay last year. That was my first time doing it. For us to literally be running across, you know, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, you know what I'm saying? And really, like, we're engaged in an activity that
I'll be there next year.
Man, it was a surreal experience to see, you know, brothers of all different backgrounds, shapes, sizes, color. You know, it was a Creole brother down there that you know, he looked like a Creole. Like, he had blue eyes, and, you know, he was a brother out there running. It was just, I mean, the entire spectrum of Black men and Black women out there. And everybody, it was just understood that we knew the significance of us being out there and what we were doing. There was a real connection to that history. And for me, it felt like, you know, like I was, you know, accepting the baton and really taking on the full responsibility of running my leg of this race. And that was for me, that was a transformational kind of experience. And so we're doing those kinds of things despite all this other stuff that we're talking about. So Toni Morrison said, if you want to fly, you gotta let go of the shit that weighs you down. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think we're trying to learn how to fly. You know?
Again, we're doing things in spite of so many obstacles and systems in place to keep us from doing these things. We're still doing a lot.
Still doing a lot.
A lot of work to be done, but we're still doing a lot.
That's
One
right.
of the things I want people listening, watching this podcast to come away from, if they get nothing else, is that you are a part of something way bigger than yourself, but you are also an important part of something way bigger than yourself. I think sometimes people may feel, I don't know, like they don't belong. I don't need to be here. Again, back to the thoughts of the world will be better off without me. No, the world needs your contribution. Don't go
Absolutely.
anywhere. We need
Absolutely.
everybody's contribution. So, you know, if you feeling, anybody feeling that way, there's a new, what do you call it?
It's a suicide crisis lifeline.
The lifeline, and I wrote it down, but I forgot. Is it 988?
It is. You got it.
Yeah,
You sound,
988.
you sound like somebody's been through mental health first aid.
You know what? 2 times. Which and I know you'll be doing some more of those, right, Phillip?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're trying to get, my goal is to get 80. I want 100%, but I'll take 80% of chapters to be represented in those courses, so that at least one captain or vice captain has been through it.
Sign me up. Sign me up.
Absolutely. We'll be doing them quarterly going into 2023.
Okay, awesome. I highly encourage any of you guys to sign up and take Brother Phillip's mental health first aid responder courses. They're very, very thorough. What is it, about 6 hours?
About 6 hours, yeah.
But it goes by so quick. You learn so much. You come out of it feeling so equipped and eager and ready to help somebody that may need some help.
Absolutely.
What we can do is recognize it when we see it. And through his course, you find out how to approach people that may be dealing with things. Again, you can only go so far with it, but if that's the most that you can do, you've done your part.
Absolutely. It's like CPR, you know what I mean? It's just for mental health. We're just trying to, provide aid until we can get them to, that next step in the treatment process if need be. And that's enough. That right there is enough. You can save a life just doing that. And the other thing that I'll say is, like, if you listen to this and you're not actively involved in a local chapter, get connected to your chapter. I mean, it's a free resource. We don't charge anything. There's no fees, no dues. Just show up, walk, run. It's not about ego. You don't have to be the fastest guy, but just get connected, because there's so many opportunities for you to be able to contribute and really, I think opportunities to really start to live into the fullness of who you are, who you were created to be. The fact that you two brothers are on here doing this podcast, I think is a piece of that. Just seeing you do what you all love, it shines through, in the conversations. So, like, it's just so many of those just natural opportunities for you to really express, your calling. That I've been brought to almost tears at times just because of the support and the opportunities that I get through BMR. It's just, I think there's too many rich opportunities within this organization for people to be kind of thinking about it, but not pull the trigger and miss out on,
I hear a lot of brothers, man, come out to the runs. Yeah, I've been watching you guys online about 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I decided to come on out, and I'm like, you know what, brother? Better late than never.
That's right.
You're here today.
That's right.
I met a brother at the gym day before yesterday. He had lost like 150 pounds, and he saw I had on my new BMR hoodie, with Uncle Lou on the back. And he was like, "What's this Black Man Run?" And I was like, "Man," I said, "this organization is an awesome organization." He said, "I want to buy a hoodie." It was funny. He just said, "I want to buy a hoodie." I said, "Man, you got to come and like our page, man, and Go to the he was online right then. It was interesting. He went online, went to blackmenrun.com and Detroit, and he said, wow, you're a captain over here. Just that quick. He wanted to search it out.
That's
But
right.
Black Men Run, man, this is an awesome organization to be linked up with. So I'm trying right now. I'm bringing it out to everyone that I come in contact. I just joined the gym membership. So the brothers in the gym, I'm wearing my gear. They want to know what's up. I'm bringing them. I'm gonna be bringing them in, man. 8 to 80, blind, lame, or crazy. They coming in.
All right,
Man.
Uncle Lou.
Uncle
Lou.
Uncle Lou.
And FYI, the podcast is actually the idea of National Vice Captain and our IT brother, Dario Randall.
Mm.
He's the third member of the Healthy Brotherhood experience behind the scenes. He puts everything together for us. Much appreciation to him for him extending the opportunity to do this with him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you name it, we need it, right? So whatever you're passionate about, I'm sure that there is a need within the brotherhood and an opportunity for you to express, whatever that is. And it's, we're humble servants, because it's not about us, it's about the brotherhood.
Exactly.
Could you imagine if each of us we see a brother working out or doing something, we just approach him and invite him.
Mm-hmm.
If brothers in all the chapters started, just invite a brother, one brother a month. I ain't even gonna say a week. Just ask one brother a month, hey, come get connected,
That's right.
Yeah. And then we have these new QR codes where you can just get a brother to hit the QR code, and then they'll be able to go straight to the link, go straight to the pages and things.
I think going forward, we need to make the National BMR Challenge.
That would be awesome.
I like that.
Let's see.
I like that.
The most memberships in a chapter, huh?
Or I won't say the most membership, but the challenge is bring a new brother to the brotherhood.
Yeah.
Yes. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
It would be awesome.
Love seeing faces.
My two I've got, two sons, and they give me a hard time because, if I see a dude that even looks like he's remotely interested in running, I'm like, hey, brother.
Now, I don't know what remotely interested looks like, Phillip.
Yeah. Man, look, it don't take much. You know what I mean? Like, basically, if you're a brother and, that's pretty much it. You're a brother, you got a pulse, you know what I mean? And don't have on some New Balances or something that looks like running oriented,
Nah.
Over with.
Some Sauconys. Oh, man.
That's right. There's some Sauconys. We Saucony runners over here on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you taking time out for us, Phillip. Like I said, this is one of two parts. The second part is going to be with we call him your twin, DeAndre Harris from Denver, Vice Captain, who also touches on mental health. So we'll continue this with him. I think we're right at an hour.
Well, yes,
got a late start there.
It's all good. We got it done.
We appreciate you being on the show, Phil.
Yes, sir. Yes, indeed.
I'm glad I had the pleasure of meeting you in Tennessee a couple of years ago.
Oh, that's right, because we both met Phil at the same time for the Great Smoky Mountain
vacation races.
Yeah, vacation races, Smoky Mountain. Yeah. And one thing I kind of noticed when he came around, Lusire, when he met us.
What's that?
I don't think he wanted to leave.
No, he did. He did. He was trying. I saw him in his head trying to figure out how can I stay.
I wanted him to stay because I could really tell that he's like.
Yeah, he had such an energy about himself.
Yeah, good energy, and that's what good energy attracts good energy.
Yeah, man, y'all have no idea how much of a blessing that was, and it was very symbolic, because I've shared this before, but I'll share it here on the podcast. that area where we were running was actually part of my route to work for a long time. And so,
Okay.
you know, we were out there in the sticks. You know, JT, I know you were concerned about the bears out there.
That ain't all. That ain't all, but definitely the bears. Yeah.
Man, so I used to drive past this spot twice a day going to and from work. And there was a cross, and on this cross, there was a rebel flag draped around it, you know, so this kind of gives you the idea. Just imagine how isolating that is, you know, again, twice a day, you know, I'm riding past that. And then that same area, I got to run through there with my brothers, and we took home, how many medals did we take home in that race?
I think we had about 10, man, because the team got second place.
Yeah.
Because I know I got 2 medals, and I'm like, I know my slow behind don't deserve no medal. And then
What year was that? That was
2021.
2021, right?
Was
Uh-huh.
22.
Man,
It was
I had
21?
about at least five. I'm looking at my medals now. I had at least about 5 of them.
Yeah, because you hit some categories too.
Yeah, yeah. I even won in the men's 50 to 54.
Okay.
And then
Fourth place.
That's awesome.
Coach O won the half straight out and the 5K
And the
straight
5K.
out.
Yeah.
And then we won as a team, and then we picked up several age placements. So to come back and be able to run that strip with my brothers and take home that much iron, that was
It was heavy
that
too.
was an incredible feeling.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, gentlemen, that's the end of our show. I think we've reached our stopping point here. I'm gonna cut off the recording. Any final words?
Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you, Phil, for coming on the show. All those that's in our listening audience, you have just experienced the brotherhood.
Yes, sir. Everybody have a good evening. Stay tuned for the second part.
Peace.